everyone today in collaboration with the Canadian International Council. I'm also on the board. Chris, thank you, President of the CIC, for agreeing to host this important talk. For those of you who don't know, yesterday the Canadian Parliament voted overwhelmingly to resettle 10,000 Uyghur refugees to Canada. Strong support of the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Montreal Member of Parliament Samir Asvari put forward this and got approval from all political parties, which is a rarity in Ottawa to see all political parties agree on doing something right. So we're really pleased, timely, it's in the news, and we're here today really to talk about the Uyghur human rights crisis, what Canadians can do about it. For those of you who don't know, there's over 1 million or 2 million Uyghur Muslims who are being completely mistreated, case of genocide against them, destruction of their cultural heritage here in China, as well as the long arm of the Chinese state that's conducting transnational repression, both in person and on social media. We first had the pleasure to host Dolkun here a few years ago, and the Chinese Consul General to Montreal wrote to me and said, we have to have a meeting, you're hosting a terrorist. I ignored his email, and the next morning we found out that he called and put pressure on the mayor of Montreal about to shut down our event. Since they did that, we said, no, we don't like to be intimidated, we don't like bullies, so we hosted Dolkun a second time. I think now it's his third. So I hope the Consul General got the message that universities and are a place where we're allowed to discuss human rights, contemporary issues, and give a platform to those who are working on some of the most important pressing issues on the planet. So that being said, we have two very fine speakers with us. We have Dolkun Isa, who is the president of the World Uyghur Congress. He just has a recent book came out. Don't have to say too much. You saw his bio. And we have Mehmet Tohti, who's a Canadian Uyghur activist, who's been very strong working with us in a couple of years. We met in DC, but really glad to have both of you here tonight. Just to have you tell us about what is happening, inform the wider Canadian public about what's happening and what Canadians can do. And I will say one last thing before I hand over the floor, is that this funny contraption here, the owl, is taking an image of all the speakers, and it's being broadcast on all our social media channels, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. So if you're on Twitter, please go to Migs at Migs Institute, retweet that to let people follow online, and we'll then also share this event later on. We'll put it up on YouTube for those who couldn't attend. We'll be able to see what was discussed. So with no further ado, I'd like to give the floor, maybe Dolkun, for you to start. And then we'll go to Mehmet, and then we'll take questions from the audience.
Okay, thank you, Carl, and thank you for your nice introduction. As Carl said, it is my first time, and here 2019 first time, and I brought a little bit of headache to him, but anyway. So thank you for hosting today, and this topic is Uyghur human rights crisis, and what Canada do actually is this title I think a little bit like, because it is already beyond of the human rights crisis. This is a genocide. So is Canadian Parliament is the first parliament recognized Uyghur genocide motions. After that, and the follow-up of Canada now is 10 parliament recognized Uyghur genocide plus European Parliament. After Canada, the Netherlands, then Belgium, then Czech Republic, then later French, UK, United States, and Ireland. Then European Parliament, then French, is all recognized Uyghur genocide. And as maybe some of you already heard, Uyghur Tribunal, and one of the people tribunal was set up. Jeffrey Nice, who is the very famous lawyers and also former prosecutor of the Milosevic, former Yugoslavia, International Criminal Court, and the World Uyghur Congress official recused him to alleged genocide, Chinese government, and the Committee Against Uyghur Genocide, crime against humanity, and all. So he set up Uyghur Tribunal. Within 18 months, he collected 100,000 page document, Uyghur Tribunal, and the pro bono tribunal, it is, of course. Then more than 500 people's testimony, Then in 2021, December 9, Uyghur tribunal make judgment. Chinese government commit against Uyghur genocide and crime against humanity. So before the Uyghur tribunal, Chinese government, of course, this is the CIA game. It's also Western correspondence says something not like all the time, because some parliament already recognized the genocide. That time also Chinese government attacks a lawmaker in the Canadian lawmakers, European Parliament lawmaker, 2021, European Union plus UK, Canada, and United States sanctioned 4 high-level Chinese Communist Party officials who link this genocide. Then Chinese government also sanction lawmaker, some and scholar as well. After the Uyghur tribunal judgment, then it is the completely according to international conventions and international law. This is not political decision; is the legal prospect. Everything is on the international law. So that's why I'm saying this is not a human rights crisis. This is already genocide. It is genocide. So actually, this the Uyghur situation today. Uyghur has been facing genocide, but most of them people thought this problem is just the start 2016 or 2017. Is a new case. Actually, not correct. It is not true. These problems exist since many years, since 1949. Since the Chinese Communist Army occupied East Turkistan, we call East Turkistan, China say Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Regions is territory. So 1949, Chinese Communist Army occupied this territory. Then, and from 1949, this discrimination, assimilation policy of the Chinese government towards the Uyghurs has continually. But since 2014, current President Xi Jinping took the power, Chinese government policy from assimilation, discrimination policy into genocidal policy. So we don't know exactly how many people today in the concentration camp because it is very difficult to get information. But we estimate at least 3 million Uyghur, Kazakh, and other Turkish-speaking people are suffering concentration camp. Until 2019, until end of 2019, this all is the people who stay in the concentration camp, detained, just subject to indoctrinate. And then denounce and force denounce national and religious identity. Show the loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party and Xi Jinping. Even if you drink some water, you have to show the loyalty for the Chinese Communist Party. Oh, thanks for the Xi Jinping, thanks for the Chinese Communist Party. Without Xi Jinping, without Chinese Communist Party, no life, no water. You have to say this repeatedly, and also everywhere monitoring is a camera monitoring you, even monitoring and you more emotion. You know, if you're not very cooperative with them, that's people and subject to tortures, physical tortures. Yeah. And since then, since 2019, some camp survivor was released from the camp because of the foreign citizen. It's not Uyghur background, some is Kazakh, some is Uzbek, but most of them have foreign background. For some is a Kazakhstan citizen, some is a Pakistan citizen, or husband is Pakistan. That's why they were released. Then after they came back to the exile, then they are made testimony to the U.S. Congress, United Nations, European Parliament, and the other media. They are tell us horrible story, horrible. So many rape cases was happening to the women, you know, so many rape cases was happening. And the forced to speaking in the Chinese, it is speaking with Uyghur completely forbidden in the camp. And the 2019, Chinese government set up a small factory inside the camp. And near the camp, then use the Uyghur to the forced labor. Yeah. Now is 25% in cotton, textile, globally from Uyghur forced labor. This is not we are saying. This is the international scholar and used from Chinese source. This is the statistic. 25% 25% cotton, and all international brand, particularly Adidas, Boss, every such an international brand, Nike, use Uyghur forced labor cotton. In China, 85% cotton textile from forced labor, Uyghur forced labor. Yes, yeah. Then no is these people used in the forced labor, and also Chinese government is since the 2016 at least 1 million Uyghur children separate from family, and the transport to the other province of China, then change name, forced to speaking Chinese, and because there's 5-6 years old children, then they denounce national identity are being Chinese. You know? Yeah, and of course this Uyghur forbidden to the Uyghur language is not new issue. When it was the East Turkistan, because Mehmet we are study same university. That time is teaching languages Uyghurs. Even today, according to Chinese constitution, autonomous law, if you see is Uyghur language one of the official language. If you see the Chinese money, 5 language, one is Chinese, one is Uyghur, one is Tibetan, one is Mongol. Even today, China is just show it. Oh look, we are respect the Uyghur language, Uyghur and education, but this is on the paper. In the paper, but reality, 2004, stop and use the Uyghur language university level. Then step by step, this from kindergarten to the university. No, even today, Uyghur children cannot speak during the break time. Use the mother tongue, and it will be punished. Yeah, this is the situation. This is not only according to the international convention, international law. It is against the Chinese own constitution as well. But we went to the United Nations, and the next week, and the China UN Committee, Economic, Cultural, Social Rights, review Chinese report. Every time we raise this issue, Chinese government side is lie, because look at our constitution or autonomous law, Uyghur language and the official language, Uyghurs, Tibet, all can receive education by language. But it is lying, because China trying to continue cheating and internationally hiding the reality. And actually, CCP is another important issue Uyghur have been faced, and religious freedom. According to Chinese constitution, 36, Article 36, guaranteed everybody have a right, believe or not believe in religious. But today, people have a right, don't believe in religious, but not right have a believe in religious. Particularly, CCP saying is a religious is python, you know. Particularly is targeting Islam. Islam is ideological illness, disaster, it must be eradicated. This is the official slogan by the Chinese Communist Party and Xi Jinping. So that's why since 2015, 2016, forbidden all fasting and headscarf, you know, and the bird, everything, yeah. And today, unfortunately, some countries and some people and the burn of the Quran, and some attack the Islamic value. All Islamic world stand up and understand, but CCP, Chinese Communist Party, burn and 2017, 2018 very openly collected Quran, burn Quran, but no single Muslim country stand up. The reaction was against this. This is the really unacceptable double standard. And also, Australian National Institute, Policy Institute published report 2021. From 2017 until 2020, within 3 years, 8,000 mosques completely demolished. And 8,000 mosques is partly destroyed. This is a user satellite image, everything that reported this. This is the 21st century is happening, but China continually saying, and sometimes organized propaganda tour from the Muslim country, Muslim journalists, mostly, and also the Muslim diplomat, and they use them to the propaganda tool. Just last month, they did. Oh, we went to the Xinjiang. Everything is very normal. They have a religious freedom. Everything fine, because they have brought them and use the Islamic scholars, sometimes Islamic Muslim diplomat to use the propaganda. Yeah, this is all. And it is not only the happening in East Turkestan, because most of the people saying is talking about only the people who stay in the concentration camp. But only around 3 million people is suffering in the concentration camp. But another million of people, we believe Uyghurs are around 20 million, China say 12 million, anyway 20 million, 12 million, 3 million in concentration camp, another more than 10 million people is outside, but no one feeling is safe, because no one know what will be happening next hours, next days, because you don't know. Everything is happening. Even you cannot ask the right why you. Anytime police knock your door, take you and put the concentration camp, you don't have a right to ask any question. So that's why most of the time people just talking about other people is a concentration camp, but other people not in the concentration camp is also not safe, because Xi Jinping already turned whole East Turkestan into the open air prison. Everyone is a prison, and we are living in exile. All family member is hostage. You know, since 2016, I can say majority, most of some Uyghurs who living in exile lost a contact family member. Only some heartbreaking news was happening at home. This news from us view some way. I personally, last telephone communication, my mother, 2017, beginning of April. Now it's already 5 years, so 6 years. 6 years, I have lost contact. But since the 6 years, several heartbreaking news. 2018, after all communication broken, after 1 year later, I got first heartbreaking news. My mother died. After I got this news, I tried to call to my family, but I couldn't access. Then later, three weeks later, I learned from the Radio Free Asia, they are randomly calling to the police or and the local government. Then they reported my mother died one of the concentration camp. She was 17, 8 years old lady. She was not a political woman, or she was not just a pensioner as a housewife. 17 years later, I learned this heartbreaking news from the media, 2018. I learned this news up to 3 weeks later. My mother, she was put in one of the concentration camp. Around 1 year, staying in one concentration camp, and she died. This is I learned from the media. 2020, I learned from Chinese Global Times, Chinese media. My father passed away, but still I have no idea where my father's cemetery is. Which condition he passed away, is hospital, concentration camp, at home, or because of the age, because of the health. I have no idea still. 2021, I got other news from my family. I learned this also from the media. My younger brother, he's sentenced to life. And my older brother, he's a mathematics professor. He's sentenced to 17 years. This is my family story. This is the news last 5-6 years from my family. My case is not unique. All Uyghur who live in here, some of my countrymen sitting behind of this hall, and Mohammed, Tohti, his family, maybe he will talk a little bit later. All Uyghur who live in the exile have the same problem. This is 21st century, communication is not problem at all, but for us, it is a big problem. We cannot communicate it. Yeah, that's why we are saying this title, Human Rights Crisis with Light. This is the current situation. Yeah, this is happening. So that's why we are doing a job. We are traveling around the world. We are doing rights issue, advocating, pushing the government and pushing the parliament to recognize, more parliament recognize Uyghur genocide, and the government also take concrete action. This genocide already start 7 years, start 2016, now is it 2023, 7 years. Yes, we have seen some positive response from the internationally. Yes, last year, October, United Nations, 50 countries made joint statement. Yes, it is good step, of course. 10, as I said, 11 parliament already recognized Uyghur genocide. Yes, yesterday was Canadian parliament also on the approved as a Uyghur resettlement bill motion. It is good, but it's not good enough because people is dying every day. People are suffering every day. You know, unfortunately, most of some country, European country, United States, and all continue make business. It is not correct time business as usual, but unfortunately, the company still make business with China because and the company in the hunger for the money, of course, but you cannot, the company cannot make money of the blood of Uyghurs. People are dying. Yeah, this is the situation. That's why we continue doing our job, and we need the help from internationally, because we believe all countries signed 1948 International Convention on the genocide, have a legal obligation stop and the ongoing genocide. And all human beings, all companies have a moral obligation to stop ongoing genocide. Just speaking, just talking is not good enough to stop. Should be take some action. So this is our wish. Of course, we are doing our job, but every human being, everybody have can do something. So that's why we need your help and your support. Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Canadian International Council and other sponsoring organizations. And this is my, I think, third or fourth visit to Concordia University, and you are doing a good job. And let me just start by reminding the tweet from Chinese Embassy in Ottawa, and it said, "We urge Canada to respect these facts, stop politically manipulating Xinjiang-related issues for ulterior motives, spreading disinformation and misleading the public." Okay, let's, for that reason, just straight up some facts. Who is misleading what? And so my name is Mehmet Tohti, and I am the Executive Director of Ottawa-based Uyghur Rights Advocacy Project. And our organization does not spread misinformation, and we do research, and we do documentation. At the same time, we do advocacy work on the basis of the documentation and the facts. And so a couple of facts. Maybe the Chinese embassy or ambassador and the embassy staff are watching us. And the last time we tried to reach them to ask questions at the University of Ottawa. And the University of Ottawa, they refused our entry to the building to ask that question, and they refused our access. At the same time, with the instruction from the Chinese ambassador, and kicked out all the cameras. And so we were protesting, and even they could not tolerate our voice, and so they shut down the blinds. But our protest did not stop. And so we are busy to straighten up the facts and reminding the Chinese government to stop this misinformation and disinformation and respect the facts. And so, what is the facts? And I left my home country in 1991, and since then it is 32 years. It is total isolation since then with my families and all direct or indirect relatives. And the Chinese government did not allow any of my family members or relatives to come to Canada and visit me, or I cannot go back. So it is total isolation. For what? Just for me to speak enough. I have a tongue to speak. I can write. That is the only two things I did in my life. I did not hurt a mosquito. That's it. And the Chinese government, for that reason, they punished the whole family. That is the fact. And this January 16, I have received a phone call from Chinese security officials by holding one of my mother's brother in a hospital bed. And I learned from that conversation that it is not even 1 month old, and I'm still trying to digest that information. And my 2 sisters died in a concentration camp. That is the fact. And my mother died in concentration camp. That is the fact. And I asked my 3 brothers, and the Chinese security officials said, we don't know. And how you don't know? Just tell me where are they, whether they're alive or not, alive or dead. Said we don't know. How about their children? How about their spouses? And so these are the facts. And we are not spreading any misinformation or disinformation. And I lost the contact from my family members since October 23rd, 2016. Now it is almost 6 years, or 7 years we are entering. And no information about any of my family members. None. Except that kind of phone call made by Chinese officials from back home. Otherwise, my relatives or anyone else do not have access to make a phone call to me. And the reason of that phone call is a number of things we did in Canada. One is the HITERA, the deal that the RCMP signed with the Chinese high-tech companies, just giving all the contracts to provide the communication service for our government officials, including our Prime Minister. And we figured out that the deal on August 31st, and we worked nearly for 4 months with our research team and Connor Haley, and we tried to convince the media and the CBC just to publish that story. We put all the facts straight, and the story published, and it was a big day in Canada that turned out to be a national discussion and a huge debate in the parliament, and finally government canceled it. And the Chinese embassy and the Chinese government was very upset because we are behind that deal, and it was the gateway for Chinese government to access all information, the communication of our government officials with world leaders. It was a crucial information that the Chinese government needed, and the HITERA was providing that information, or providing that grant for Chinese government to have access to our internal communication. We're upset. And secondly, we are working really hard to pull out our public funds, especially Canada pension funds, invested in China on Chinese companies tied up with Uyghur genocide and Uyghur forced labor. The total amount is nearly $55 billion. And we are campaigning to convince the Canadian public and the politicians, of course, the CPP-IV, just to withdraw those huge amount of public funds from China, because it is not ethical, and I'm a pension contributor, and I don't like to receive my pension from the money they made out of genocide. It is morally unacceptable for me, and for that reason, we are standing up and continue to stand up on this issue. And so Chinese government is not happy about that. At the same time, we are working with the universities, because universities endowment fund in Canada, including McGill, we don't know, Concordia, and the University of British Columbia, University of Toronto, and all other major universities, they invested in Chinese companies directly tied up to Uyghur genocide. And we try to rectify this mistake. It is a crucial mistake, and we cannot afford to make this mistake. And the Chinese government is really upset about it. And also, number of campaigns and legal campaigns we are advocating to pass the legislation to ban products made by the use of Uyghur forced labor entering Canada. And because we have a number of obligations as a Canadians and the government of Canada to uphold. One is as a provision of USMCA agreement or CUSMA agreement, United States, Mexico, and the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. The old name is NAFTA. The Article 23, the bans all products made by the use of forced labor or child labor enter the North American market. And the United States so far seized more than 5,000 shipments and a total worth of $1.4 billion. And in Canada, 0. And we keep our custom door open. And our market is dumping ground for products made by the use of Uyghur forced labor. Solar panel, textile products, electronics, even fruits and vegetables, tomato. And 1/3 of tomato ketchups or tomato pastes, all we use in daily life, are coming out of East Turkistan, made by the use of Uyghur forced labor. It is huge. And in the more than 50% of polysilicon grade that is used to make the solar panel, and are coming out of the region, made by the use of Uyghur forced labor. And vinyl products for hardwood flooring, nearly 70% of the worldwide supply coming out of the region, made by the use of Uyghur forced labor. And a cotton, my friend Dolkun already mentioned. So these are the implications in our daily life, in our daily shopping. We are consuming these products with our pocket money, and that money ends up in China and strengthen that regime who is committing genocide. And so here's the implication. And we are directly or indirectly supporting that regime. We are complicit. And we are reminding that. And we are educating our Canadian public and politicians. Hey, there's a problem here. And so this is our job. And of course, this kind of campaign and initiatives and day after day getting more attention from public. And that upsets the Chinese government. And so by hijacking the uncle in a hospital bed, and Chinese government wants to send me a message. Okay, the most of your relatives are gone, and here's one, and if you do not stop, here's a consequence. That was the message. Otherwise, there's no any other the ways that Chinese government can communicate with me. Why? And so Uyghur advocacy is really risky job, and you have to put the safety and well-being of your loved ones at risk. And on the other hand, if we think back, and we are living in a free society because someone else before us paid that price to provide the safety for us. And so we were activists and a dedicated person. If we do not stand up, and if we do not stand up for not only for our loved ones and for everyone, treat them equal, the Chinese government use it as a vulnerability and use against us. And if everyone scares, it is the win for Chinese government. So price for advocacy is really high. And so just I would like to remind that because of that high price, and we have to be more vigilant in our daily consumption of products, we have to check where it is made, whether it is made by the use of forced labor. And in Canada, we joined with the United States and European Union to sanction 4 Chinese individuals and 1 entity. It is bare minimum, and still we have a number of Chinese high-tech companies operating in Canada, functional, just like Dahua is banned with conditional for 3 years to clean up all already installed equipments out of the service within 3 years' time. Still Huawei equipments in the communication system. And the Dahua, second largest camera manufacturer in the world, still available maybe in this building in the monitoring system. Hikvision, SenseTime, Alibaba. So all of those companies are directly tied up with the Uyghur genocide. Why? Because Chinese government they brought all of those companies and they create a kind of platform which is called Integrated Joint Operational Platform. And that platform gathers all information from the street cameras and the other monitoring and the surveillance system into one hub, which is called iDrop. That system processes all the information and identifies and compares the stored information, for example, Yona Diamond, if he passes on the street, the camera captures his face and it compares all the information and his national ID card, registration, everything in the system, and it immediately triggers police alarm to arrest him within 15 seconds. And the Dahua, Hikvision, those companies are part of that system. And the bare minimum, they contribute the Chinese government to issue a social credit system. Okay, what kind of products this person is purchasing? How much money he's using for travel, or this and that. On the basis of those data collected from those high-tech companies, Chinese government categorize people and they give certain scores and restricted their behavior on the basis of that score. Or you can go to abroad, you can apply to passport, or you're allowed to be on board. And everything is decided based on that social credit system, which is established by those data collected from those high-tech companies. And so it is tied up. And so those companies are operational in Canada. And so how we can effectively ban those Chinese companies? Actually, Dahua is rebranding already the banned products by United States in Canada and selling to United States again with different name. And so there are scandalous business are going on, and when United States Custom Border Protection seized all products made by the use of Uyghur forced labor, and the Chinese government now starts to redirect those products to Canada or Mexico through a land border, re-enter to Canada, United States here. So there's a loophole, and how we can correct that one. So there are a lot of legal and the policy work before us, and we have to complete it. We have to be more vigilant, and we have to engage with our politicians and the lawmakers. And we have laws, and sometimes, for example, we are the signatory party for anti-slavery convention and elimination of all sorts of racial, political discrimination. Canada already signatory state for all of those UN conventions. All of them prohibits racial discrimination and the importation of products made by the slave labor or child labor. But when it comes to implementation, we don't have that courage, or we don't have that capacity to accomplish our legal obligation. So if there is a lack of money, a lack of human resource or intelligence resource, we have to provide that. And we have to increase the capacity of CBSA to do their job. And this is one part of the campaign. Currently, we are engaging with our federal politicians and how Canada can learn from United States and how we can allocate certain amount of funding to CBSA and how we can increase the human resources and how we can increase their capacity to collect right sort of intelligence information so that we have a certain ability to check that those companies, each step of supply chain, where it is originated, whether it is tied up with the forced labor or genocide. And so these are the concrete actions we are undertaking. And we are successful in some, and it takes long road. And another the initiative we are taking is we are using all legal tools just to get some institutions into action. For example, CORE, Canadian Ombudsperson for Responsible Enterprise, that is federal watchdog organization established to monitor and investigate the Canadian big corporations and their business ethics, whether they are in compliance with our law in their overseas operation. And so we filed 14 complaints for 14 different big Canadian companies, and 13 complaints already accepted by CORE, and it is in the process. And we filed a legal application against CBSA for failing to exercise their jurisdictional duty, And so we lost in the initial case, and we are appealing. That process is also ongoing. And also we are pushing the legislators to come up with certain kind of tougher law to put a certain amount of corporate responsibilities for the big corporations in their overseas operation. And that it may take some time. And also we want to emphasize that the putting ban on certain products made by the use of Uyghur forced labor or forced labor is not enough, and we have to have a legislation or certain measures implemented to ban the financial investment on those companies. For example, now the United States banned many products originated from the East Turkistan, but there's no ban for financial investment. And so greedy pension funds, just like Canada Pension Plan, they continue to invest on those companies tied up with Uyghur forced labor, and they can sell their products somewhere else. And so how we can close that loopholes, not only putting ban on those products, at the same time put restrictions on the investment funds to invest on those companies. So there are a lot of legal challenges ahead of us, and I'm grateful for our legal team and Yona, including Yona Diamond. They're proud that they're giving his legal advice for us since almost 2 years. And from time to time, we are seeking his legal advice, and we are working with the 9 legal professionals in Canada. And they are helping to draw a roadmap, what kind of legal advocacy we can pursue and how we can do that. And recently, one international trade lawyer, Lyndon Dales, he approached us and offered his volunteer service, and we are trying to use some shortcut instead of waiting years for legal action, just to write the CBSA and provide documentation to them for redetermination of the tariff classification. Okay, these products specifically tied up with forced labor, so these products should be redetermined in the tariff classification and put ban on the importation list. And so I think this, if we are successful on this, this is one shortcut that we can pursue in our legal advocacy. And we are waiting the result of that legal paper already submitted to CBSA. And so just briefly about M62 and what does it mean. And yesterday it was a historic day, not only for our community, at the same time for Canada and a Western democracy, at the same time for China. And the Canada, our parliament and elected representatives spoke loudly and clearly. And they passed a motion. In a preamble, there's a clear description of genocide in it. And all cabinet members voted. And before the vote, we had a chance to briefly talk with the Prime Minister and a number of cabinet ministers, and we tried to convince them just abstention is not an option because it sends a wrong signal to Chinese government. When you abstain from voting, it is still green light for Chinese government. It should be changed. And after the vote, and we had a chance to meet with the Prime Minister again, and we thanked for his courage. And also we met 6 cabinet ministers where we expressed our gratitude, and all political party leaders. And last night we had a reception, and the 5 cabinet members attended, and nearly 27 MPs and 3 senators, and the Minister of Immigration, Minister of Transportation, Minister of Labor, and a number of other ministers attended, and they also shared our joyful moment. And the communities came all across Canada just to witness this historic moment. It is important because the Chinese government, since a number of decades, has been pursuing the transnational repression against Uyghurs by offering a certain level of political or financial incentives to neighboring countries just like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, or Islamic countries, and Turkey. And the many Uyghurs, in one Wilson Center's recent report, more than 1,500 Uyghurs already deported back, and their whereabouts unknown. And so this is a huge challenge, and Canada has witnessed that transnational repression because one of our the citizen of Saint Jalil, Canadian citizen from Uyghur origin, and he was abducted by China in 2006 when he traveled to Uzbekistan, in third country, and deported back to China and sentenced for life. And so far, the Chinese government did not even allow a single consular access for our citizen. And that is a vivid example of transnational repression. And so Uyghurs are facing that kind of challenge. And so it is the obligation from the international law as part of the responsibility to protection doctrine to offer a protection for those vulnerable communities. And we have been working nearly 5 years, try to convincing our political party leaders and the government officials and the lawmakers the severity of the situation. And a number of committees issued report and issued recommendations to the government for the resettlement of those vulnerable communities. And at the end, at least one motion tabled, and they received unanimous support from all the cabinet members, 322 against 0. It is historic and it is unseen in our parliamentary history. And so that speaks volume. And now it is time for action. And our organization and the World Uyghur Congress, we would like to work with the Immigration Canada and the Global Affairs. We're already committed, and we already expressed our willingness to offer all kinds of logistic supports to get those Uyghurs safely back to Canada. And it is important for Uyghurs, and the 10,000 may not be a big number in compared to more than 100,000 refugees, but this is the first time in history that one democratic nation stood up and offered it is helping hands for those vulnerable community. And it is a reason for Uyghurs to be hopeful. That provided a reason for the oppressed or victimized community to be optimistic. That is important. We have to keep that hope alive. And in that regard, it is historic. And the Chinese government also got the message. And in Ballet, and 2 months ago, the Chinese President Xi Jinping acted rudely to our Prime Minister. You like him or not? Politically agree with him or not? That is a totally different matter. He's the Prime Minister of Canada. No world leader should act in that way to our Prime Minister. And I have really hard time to digest it, and it is disrespectful, and Canada should respond it. And in my brief meeting with the Prime Minister, I reiterated, Canada must respond. Staying idle is not an option. Abstention should not be an option this time, because that provides a green light. And when you say that we, as the government of Canada, we take the allegation of genocide seriously, blah, 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 that still sends the wrong signal to Chinese government. They interpret that, okay, our crime did not reach that threshold to be called genocide, so we have more room to go. That is literally what it means. And I spoke with a number of the advisor of Prime Minister. You should change that narrative, because that is the wrong signal. And this time, at least with that motion, it changed that tone. It is a win for Canada. And we have to straight up our spine. Sometimes you have to stand tall on justice. Even it is for China, then we have more credibility. And so there are a lot to talk, and let me stop here. And if there's a question, and then we can address. Thank you.
you both for coming here, telling us about the work that you're doing. I know it seems so difficult. You both suffered family members in this. Mehmet, thank you for giving a really deep, ingrained idea of what policy-wise can be done domestically to kind of counter this. Economic sanctions, bans, doing research against which things are coming from forced labor. I think it's very important. And also, looking, I think one thing that left me is saying it's great that Canada is resettling Uyghurs. That's very important, but that is not enough.
Yeah.
That is it's a humanitarian gesture, but it won't end the suffering of those who are within China. So I those two things, those 2 points you made stuck with me. So I would like to open the floor to anyone who has questions. Si vous avez une question en français, vous aimeriez demander en français, on va le traduire. But perhaps I see Chris, President of the CIC, has something to say. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming to this event. I'll sit down. It's a really devastating portrait that you put out in front of us, and given us a lot to think about and a lot to take action on. I just have two questions. Some months ago, I read an article in the Globe and Mail about the concentration camps that you both described, and it was pretty devastating, as what you've said, and impressive that the journalist was able to get access and get it really inside with the sources. So my first question is, where can we get good information about the situation that you've described that's reliable and that we can count on? And I'm thinking mainly through journalists and independent organizations. I know you're doing your own research, and I respect that, but I think that often people respect an independent journalist's information. So I'd be interested in what you would advise us where to get information. The second question is, you talked a lot about what Canada has done yesterday and your work, but what about international organizations? Have you made any progress in the United Nations to get resolutions, or on the Economic and Social Committee? There's a problem, of course, that China is on the Security Council and has the veto, but is there any progress you've made at the UN or other human rights organizations, international organizations, or indeed a coalition of countries that are supporting you?
Yes, it is very difficult to get reliable information directly from East Turkistan, but however, now is quite a lot of international media reported published. For example, BBC made amazing report, at least three documentary. Use the Chinese resource, and also CNN, Al Jazeera. No, it's quite a lot of international media report. Besides this, also some leaked document. For example, New York Times, Chinese cable, and later leaked another Xinjiang police file last year's May 24, and more than 5,000 the detainers picture, everything was. This all leaked document is published. And also, as I said, since 2019, some camp survivors. So far, 12 camp survivors, we know, they are speaking out, they get the testimony, they are tell all the horrible story. Some is witness, some is the teachers, first use the teacher in the concentration camp, some is the detainers. Now is Europe have 5 camp survivor, 2 is French, 1 in Sweden, 2 in Netherlands, is United States, 5 camp survivors. They are all stay in different camp, but they all tell the same story and the horrible story. And also, besides a lot of international research institute, ASPI, and also Wallenberg and the institution, the research institute, they have as a very, very nice report as well. Now it is the good enough resource to read it and the research centers. Yeah, so of course this is not good enough, because this is the only very, very small part of the reality. But this is the oldest report of media report of survivor testimony and leaked document. It is really good enough, at least to describe what is going on for the Uyghurs. It is good enough at the Uyghur tribunal judgment even. It is 100,000 page document. It's a collected 100,000. You can see is a Uyghur tribunal website. You can read a lot of personal testimony, the people's what's going on. Yeah, and internationally, maybe